My name is Emily Harper. I'm 27, and I never expected a New Year's Eve dinner to feel like walking into a minefield. Yet, there I was, stepping into the glow of Crystal Bay Bistro, dressed carefully, feeling a rare flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. The place was elegant, chandeliers casting soft light across polished tables, waiters floated by with trays of champagne, and every detail screamed celebration. Everyone looked perfect, and I, as usual, felt like an intruder. I hadn't seen my mother in weeks. She had called earlier in the month, her voice sugar-sweet, insisting that this dinner was family time, Emily. My gut twisted in knots, but I told myself she might be sincere. I was wrong. No more than 5 minutes after I sat down, she leaned across the table. Her perfume was faint but sharp, and her voice, almost tender in tone, cut through the hum of the restaurant. "We only invited you out of pity," she whispered. "Don't stay too long, okay?" For a moment, I froze. I thought I had misheard her. Maybe her tone was ironic? Maybe... No. The smirk tugging at the corner of her lips told me otherwise. From the corner of my eye, I saw my brother, Caleb, smirk, then laugh. "Yeah," he said, loud enough for a few nearby relatives to hear. "Emily's basically the family failure, the one who never made it, the one they have to rescue and hide." A couple of relatives chuckled, the kind of polite, strained laughs that mask enjoyment at someone else's expense. Someone muttered, "At least she showed up on time for once." It was a coordinated assault, subtle and sharp. I felt each word hit like a needle. My stomach sank, my hands trembled slightly, but a strange calm started to settle over me. I didn't cry, I didn't argue, I didn't even look away. I smiled, took a slow sip of my champagne, set the glass down deliberately, and said, "I've got an early morning tomorrow." No drama, no scene, just a quiet retreat from their little circus. I walked out into the icy night, the laughter from inside still ringing in my ears. They thought I left because I was weak. They had no idea I was planning my next move. 1 week later, the world they thought they controlled would start slipping through their fingers, and every signature, every document they had leaned on me for would come back to remind them whose name had been carrying the weight all along. The week started quietly in my small Seattle apartment. The couch sagged in the middle, thrifted furniture scattered, my laptop open on a coffee table crowded with mismatched mugs. I sipped a mug of lukewarm tea, scrolling through old emails I had never really read, when my phone started buzzing. First, a single call from my mother, then another, then 3 more back to back. I let them all go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, Caleb's name flashed across the screen. He called again and again. While it buzzed in my hand, email notifications exploded. Urgent, account changes, statement available, action required. Finally, I answered one of my mom's calls. Her panic in her voice was immediate. Her usual composed tone, reserved for appearances, was gone. "Emily, what did you do? Do you even understand what's happening? The cabin, our cabin, is gone. Strangers at Crystal Lake are saying they're the owners, and your name is all over the paperwork." She skipped over a breath and continued. "The bank says some of our accounts are closed. Joint ones, you were on them. Payments bounced. Fees. Your father is furious. What have you done?" In the background, I heard shouting. My father, David, a booming, calm voice usually, arguing, and my mother scrambling, half crying, half yelling. I didn't respond. I let her words hang there. I watched the gray Seattle sky, rain sliding down the window pane, and let the panic echo through her own voice instead of mine. Another call buzzed. Caleb again. This time, texts followed, a torrent of them. "You tanked my credit score. Do you realize what that does to my clients? You sabotaged our family trips, our summer plans. How could you be this selfish? All because you couldn't handle a harmless joke at dinner?" I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the memory of that New Year's Eve dinner play over in my head. The whispers, the laughs, the way they painted me as the failure, the disappointment, the invisible child in their perfectly curated family. That night, after the humiliation had settled into something sharp and cold, I opened my laptop and pulled up every document I had ever signed for the family. Deeds, joint accounts, loan agreements, emails from Caleb, messages from my parents, every paper that had ever been presented to me as family help or just signing for convenience. I dug through a worn folder hidden in the back of my closet, paper copies I had never understood but signed anyway because they said it was for the family. For the first time, I read them carefully. The Lake Crystal cabin, the family jewel, was not shared for tax reasons as they had always claimed. It was mine, my signature, my ownership. Every joint account, every credit line, every emergency fund that Caleb had opened just in case listed me as cosigner or primary holder. The family vacation bills, upgrades, and luxurious trips, they had all run through my name. Page after page, it became undeniable. I wasn't the failure. I was the backbone, the invisible safety net they had built around themselves using my identity, my credit, my future. I grabbed a pen, opened a blank notebook, and wrote at the top, "Take it back." Then I started a list. The cabin, every joint account, any loan or financial tie they had added me to without real consent. I didn't know the exact steps yet, but I knew one thing. I was done being the family prop, done being their invisible pillar. The next call on my phone buzzed again. This time, I answered calmly. "Emily," said a voice I hadn't heard in months, "slow down. Walk me through each document." It was Maya, my college friend, now a lawyer in the city. She had always been the practical one, the one who understood fine print and legal language. I spun my laptop around and showed her the mountain of documents, deeds, account summaries, loan statements, every page marked with my name. Maya's expression shifted instantly from friend mode to lawyer mode. "Emily," she muttered, "they can't do this. This is yours, yours alone. Let's plan carefully, cleanly, so no one can argue it." We went line by line that night. The cabin, the joint accounts, the emergency credit lines, they all showed my ownership or responsibility, despite their claims otherwise. For the first time, the invisible chains they had wrapped around me became visible, and I realized something vital. I didn't need drama. I didn't need yelling. I didn't need revenge. I just needed the truth, the law, and the courage to claim what was mine. By the end of the night, my notebook had new notes, arrows, and bold words circling each item. Mine. The plan was taking shape. 1 week after a single humiliating dinner, I was no longer just Emily, the failure of the family. I was Emily, the owner, the decision maker, the one finally holding the papers and signatures they had always waved like weapons over my head. The morning after that long night with Maya, I sat on my sagging couch staring at the notebook on my coffee table. The first 3 items, cabin, joint accounts, emergency credit line, were circled, arrows pointing to legal notes, reminders, and steps. Each mark felt like a small victory. I didn't celebrate. I just sat quietly, sipping lukewarm coffee, letting the reality sink in. For years, they had used my name like a prop, a safety net, and now I had the power to undo it. Maya had explained the plan simply. We would follow the paper trail, legally, cleanly, and thoroughly. No drama, no impulsive moves. Every step documented, every signature accounted for. I picked up my phone and dialed the one person I trusted most in this kind of situation. Maya had connections to a couple looking for a second home in the area of the cabin. If I played it right, the cabin could be sold quietly and quickly, legally, leaving my parents with no leverage. By late morning, we had an appointment set. I felt a mixture of nerves and anticipation. Part of me wanted to back out, to leave the cabin in their hands and pretend I hadn't uncovered the truth. But the memory of that New Year's Eve, my mother whispering pity, Caleb laughing at me, kept my resolve steady. I arrived at Maya's office in the early afternoon. The space was a contrast to the polished restaurant from which I had fled. Overstuffed chairs, stacks of legal documents, and whiteboards filled with notes gave it a lived-in, practical feel. Maya greeted me with a warm smile. Her hair was in a messy bun, oversized hoodie on, entirely unpolished, but somehow that made her presence reassuring. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded. The buyers, a couple in their mid-30s, arrived shortly after. They were polished and professional, exactly the kind of people my parents would have adored selling to. As Maya walked them through the cabin photos on her laptop, I felt a pang of nostalgia for the summers spent there with my grandparents, the only people who had ever made me feel like I belonged. But the instinct to walk away faded when I remembered the whispers, the smirks, the way my family had used me. This time, I would make the decisions. Maya guided the process carefully. Each paragraph in the contract was explained. "This clause confirms you are the sole owner," she pointed. "Signing here means the title transfers legally to the buyer. Your decision." My hand shook slightly, but I signed. The cabin that had been a weapon in their hands, proof of my failure, was now legally leaving my control on my terms. After the cabin was addressed, I turned to the next items, joint accounts. I started with the easiest, the family credit card, used for vacations, dinners, and luxury upgrades, all tied to my name. A calm phone call confirmed I was the primary holder. I requested closure. The representative was polite, professional, and in the end, compliant. Next, the emergency line of credit Caleb had opened after one of his failed deals. I was technically a co-applicant, fully liable. I calmly requested my name removed and the account frozen. Initially, there was resistance, but referencing consent and misuse, as Maya had advised, the bank relented. One by one, I went through each account, each tie I had unknowingly been part of, utility bills, backup checking accounts, joint financial instruments, all tied up and now under my direct control or closed. Every completed step felt like shedding a layer of invisibility. For years, my identity had been a scaffold for their lifestyle. Now, each action returned it to me. I documented everything meticulously. Call logs, email confirmations, screenshots, proof of the change. At first, it felt petty, like I was building a case against my own family, but gradually it felt like reclaiming reality. I was not crazy. I had not imagined their reliance on me. Every document, every phone call, every closed account was a step toward autonomy. By evening, the sun had faded into a dim Seattle gray. My notebook lay open, heavy ink marking the first 3 items as completed. The cabin sold, pending closing, the credit card and emergency line handled. I let myself breathe. For the first time in a long while, I felt a semblance of control. Not dramatic, not vindictive, just control. But family never makes things simple. My phone buzzed incessantly. Texts from my mother, messages from Caleb, each trying to guilt, threaten, or intimidate me. My initial instinct was to respond, to justify, to explain. But I didn't. I had a new rule: documentation over drama. Words were cheap. Paper and law were real. 2 days after posting a vague Facebook reflection about reclaiming my name and credit, Caleb showed up at my apartment. He pounded on the door like he was trying to knock it off the hinges. I had just sat down with coffee and my laptop. "Emily," he yelled, voice echoing in the narrow hallway. "You've destroyed my credit. Clients pulled out of deals. What the hell did you do?" I opened the door just enough to block most of the view with my body. I stayed calm. "I removed myself from accounts that shouldn't have had my name on them," I said evenly. "I froze lines of credit I was tricked into co-signing. I closed a card I was primary on without consent." He scoffed. "You're overreacting. Dad had it managed. We were using it strategically. That's what families do." Something in me snapped. I stepped back, opened the door wider, and gestured toward my tiny apartment. "Do you see a cabin here, Caleb? Do you see the credit card fattened by your vacations? All I see are bills with my name on them, and a family that thought I'd never notice." His jaw tightened. He barked about his career, the consequences, the ruined plans. I stood firm. "It wasn't a joke when you called me a failure," I said quietly. "And these weren't just a few signatures. They were my life." He faltered briefly, a flicker of guilt crossing his face before he shoved it down. "Fine, you want to play it this way? I'm bringing Dad." He left abruptly. An hour later, the next knock was quieter but somehow heavier. My father, David, stood there in a pressed shirt, calm as he used to be with clients. He didn't ask to come in. He walked past me and took the only decent chair as if it were his by default. "Emily," he began, voice measured, "you've made some impulsive decisions. You're affecting more than just yourself." I didn't flinch. "Adults read what they sign. Adults don't hide debts in their children's names. Adults don't tell their daughter a house is for her future, then act shocked when she treats it like it actually is. I laid out the folder that Maya had brought. Deeds, credit line statements, joint account summaries, notes from Harold about updating the estate plan. I pointed to my grandparents' will, clearly leaving the property to me. I showed the lines where my name had been woven into loans, accounts, and responsibilities without consent. For the first time, his confident mask faltered. He scanned the documents. I could see him registering that the power balance had shifted. "You went to Harold?" he asked slowly. I nodded. "Yes, he's making it right, legally and officially." David's jaw tightened. "Maybe we blurred a few lines over the years," he said softly, "but you are making a spectacle. Spectacle doesn't matter. Truth does. And boundaries do. I'm done being your safety net. I'm done being the failure in your stories." For a long moment, the apartment was quiet, except for the hum of the fridge. The lines were drawn, the power shifted, and for the first time, I felt the weight of my own name returning to me. The day after David left my apartment, I woke to a quiet that felt almost foreign. No shouting, no frantic texts, just the faint gray light spilling through the blinds. For the first time in years, the chaos my parents thrived on, the manipulation, the subtle control, was absent. I poured myself coffee and opened my notebook. The cabin, the joint credit card, the emergency credit line, all three had been addressed, but there were still smaller threads to untangle. Utility accounts under my name, backup checking accounts, lines of credit I barely remember signing, and the last few documents that tied me to family expenses without my knowledge. Step by step, I made the calls. I stayed calm, collected, and professional, leaning heavily on everything Maya had taught me. Each account I closed, each name I removed, felt like untying another knot from years of being used as a prop in their perfect family narrative. By late afternoon, everything was either closed, frozen, or reassigned where it belonged. The sense of control was intoxicating, subtle but undeniable. I paused and stared at the screen. For years, my parents had controlled the story, the posts, the pictures, the captions, the curated image of a happy family. I had allowed it, silently, letting them use my life and identity to prop up their perfect facade. It was time to reclaim my voice. I typed slowly, deliberately. Sometimes you grow up thinking certain things are family gifts. Sometimes your name, your credit, and your identity are being quietly used as a safety net without your consent. I finally read the fine print. I'm taking back what is legally mine, and I won't sign anything I don't fully understand ever again. No names, no drama, just the truth. I hit post. Within minutes, reactions began flooding in. Old friends, college classmates, people who had seen the curated perfection of my parents' lives online, they chimed in with support. "Proud of you for setting boundaries. This hits too close to home. Are you okay?" Even distant acquaintances, seeing the post as a vague reflection, nodded silently in solidarity. Then came the reactions that stung the most, a string of texts and calls from my parents. "Mom, what is that post supposed to mean? Take it down right now. You're making us look like monsters." "Caleb, delete that. Clients can see this. Do you even realize how bad this makes us look?" For the first time, I didn't respond. I let it sit. My voice had returned. My name had returned. And now it was time for them to feel the quiet consequences of their actions. 2 days later, Caleb showed up at my apartment again. This time, pounding had been replaced by sharp knocks. He tried to intimidate, to guilt, to frame his losses as mine, but I didn't waver. "You think this is funny?" he barked. "You nuked my credit, ruined plans, everything." I opened the door, standing firm. I removed myself from accounts I never should have been on. I froze credit lines I didn't consent to. I closed a card I was the primary holder of. This isn't revenge. This is responsibility. His face flickered, a flash of guilt and frustration. "You're overreacting." "No," I said softly, deliberately. "I'm reclaiming my life, my name, my boundaries, and I won't let you use me anymore. The next call came from David. He tried a softer approach, speaking as if we were adults negotiating a business deal. I listened quietly, letting him speak, but the folder with the deeds, statements, and legal notes sat on the table between us, a tangible reminder that this was no longer a discussion of opinion, it was fact. He tried to frame our family as a system of shared risk, as if my years of co-signing, unknowingly bailing them out, and absorbing consequences had been some noble sacrifice. I stayed calm. Adults don't hide deaths in their children's names. Adults don't tell a daughter a house is for her future and then act shocked when she treats it like it actually is. I'm done being the backup plan. He looked at the documents, eyes narrowing, realizing that my legal and documented approach left him no room to maneuver. For the first time, he was on the defensive. By the end of that week, everything was settled on my side. The cabin was in the hands of buyers, pending closing. Accounts were closed, frozen, or reassigned. My name, my credit, my life finally untangled from the family safety net that had secretly controlled me. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a strange calm. For the first time, I realized what real boundaries felt like: quiet, deliberate, and unshakable. My parents had spent years controlling, manipulating, using guilt and fear as tools. I had spent days quietly, legally, methodically untangling myself. No shouting, no public scenes, just paper, proof, and patience. And as I watched the sunset over the gray Seattle skyline, I finally allowed myself a small smile. Control wasn't loud. It wasn't vengeful. It was mine. The morning after everything had been untangled, I woke to silence. Not the tense, controlled silence of my parents' home, where every pause felt like judgment, but real silence. It was calming, almost dizzying. For the first time, I could breathe without waiting for someone else's reaction. I made coffee, moved my laptop to the small desk by the window, and opened a blank document. I didn't know exactly what I was going to write, but I needed to put something down. Something for me, a plan, a map, a reminder that I didn't have to live under anyone else's shadow. The first thing I did was catalog every step I had taken. Each closed account, frozen credit line, and reassigned utility bill became a checkpoint in my quiet rebellion. The cabin, now in the hands of buyers, pending closing, represented more than money. It represented freedom, proof that I could make decisions, even painful ones, that weren't dictated by guilt or family expectations. Next came the personal rebuild. I signed a lease for a small studio downtown, a space with tall windows, scuffed hardwood floors, and room enough to finally spread out my work. I hung sketches of game ideas, set up my laptop, and arranged my few books and mementos. For the first time, the space felt entirely mine. No parental shadows, no invisible ledger of obligations, just me. I texted Maya a picture. Her reply was 3 words. About time, Jenna. That little affirmation hit harder than anything my parents had ever said. It wasn't about validation, it was acknowledgement. She had seen me trapped under years of manipulation, and now she saw me taking control. Over the next few weeks, my parents tried, in their own ways, to claw back the narrative. My mom sent messages with carefully curated apologies, each word polished to appear genuine. David continued to call, trying to negotiate, trying to guilt. Ryan made a last-ditch attempt to intimidate. I let them talk. I didn't respond. I documented everything: call logs, emails, screenshots, receipts. Every attempt to reassert control was a reminder of what had been and what I refused to let happen again. In those quiet days, I began to understand something profound. Boundaries aren't just physical, they're emotional, financial, legal, and maintaining them isn't about punishment. It's about survival, respect, and clarity. I reached out to Harold one last time. The estate plan was updated, the credit lines were clarified, any lingering obligations tied to me legally were reassigned or closed. He didn't lecture, he didn't moralize, he just made sure the paper trail was airtight. It was comforting to know that if anyone tried to dispute, challenge, or manipulate, the record would speak for itself. No drama, no yelling, just facts. Then came the quiet, rewarding moments. Sitting at my new desk, sketching game levels while sunlight spilled across the floor. Walking past the cabin one last time before closing, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. Opening my bank app and seeing my accounts finally under my control. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need public vindication. I needed clarity, respect, and control, and I had them. Months later, when I met my mom at a neutral cafe, the tension was still there, but the dynamic had shifted. She apologized, sincerely this time, not a conditional, performative, "I'm sorry if you felt that way." She admitted she had used my identity to prop up her image and that she regretted it. I listened, nodded, and accepted her words. But I didn't offer excuses. I didn't erase the past. Instead, I set clear expectations. No joint accounts, no financial entanglements, no more using me as a prop. If she wanted a relationship with me, it would be on my terms. David never fully apologized, but he stopped calling multiple times a day. He stopped trying to guilt me. I didn't celebrate it. I just acknowledged that the boundaries were holding. That was enough. I spent the following months focusing on me. The studio became a sanctuary. My work thrived. I paid off my own legitimate debts, set aside savings, and even started a small emergency fund I controlled fully. No one else's signatures, no one else's obligations. Mine. And slowly, life returned to normal, but a new normal. One where I could say no without fear. Where my identity wasn't a tool for someone else's gain, where my time, energy, and name were mine alone. The funny thing about reclaiming control, it isn't flashy. There are no fireworks, no dramatic confrontations. It's quiet, it's deliberate, it's consistent. And when you finally experience it, you realize the only approval you ever needed was your own. I write this now as a reminder, not just for me, but for anyone who feels trapped under someone else's expectations. Family can love, family can support, but no one has the right to use your name, your credit, your identity, or your life as leverage. Read the fine print, ask questions, set boundaries, take back what's yours, because the only person who will consistently have your back is you. Weeks had passed since the cabin sale, the accounts closure, and the legal updates. Life had finally settled into a rhythm that wasn't dictated by anyone else's expectations. I woke up on a gray Seattle morning, poured my coffee, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel tense, defensive, or used. I felt free. The studio space became more than just a place to work. It was a symbol. Every sketch I pinned, every note I typed, every idea I developed reminded me that this life belonged to me. No signatures forced, no favors owed, no invisible debts. Just me, my name, and my future. Occasionally, my parents would try to reach out. Messages, calls, the occasional guilt-laden text. I read them calmly, documented them, and let them sit. I didn't need to respond. I didn't need to justify myself. They were learning the hard way. Boundaries are not suggestions, they are rules. Ryan came around less often. He still struggled with the loss of control, a loss of the safety net he had depended on my identity to maintain. But even his aggression lost power because I had proof, paperwork, and confidence backing me up. I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I simply existed, calmly in control of my life, while they adapted or floundered around me. And that's when I realized the biggest lesson of all. Reclaiming your name, your credit, and your autonomy isn't about revenge. It's about self-respect. It's about refusing to let someone else profit from your silence or your trust. It's about understanding your worth, your limits, and your rights, and acting on them. I thought back to that New Year's Eve dinner, the whispers, the jokes, the subtle cruelty. At the time, I had felt powerless, but every step I had taken since then, from contacting Maya to closing accounts, selling the cabin, and meeting with Harold, was proof that power is often quiet. It grows in the background until one day it simply exists, and when it does, it cannot be ignored. I also learned that control isn't about punishing those who hurt you. It's about protecting yourself, about building systems, safeguards, and boundaries that allow you to thrive without the constant fear of exploitation. It's about being proactive, not reactive. It's about reading the fine print, asking the hard questions, and standing firm when everyone else expects you to bend. Today, when I sit at my desk, I don't think about the money they used me for or the humiliation they piled on me. I think about the person I've become, capable, aware, and unshakable. I think about the freedom of signing my own name, making my own choices, and living my life according to my rules. And sometimes I allow myself a small smile, remembering the irony. The people who thought I was the failure, the one who would always be manipulated, the one they could humiliate at dinner, are the ones who had to face the consequences of their actions, quietly, legally, and irrevocably. Here's the truth I want anyone watching this to understand. You are not a safety net. You are not a prop. You are not obligated to shoulder the weight of someone else's mistakes or ego. Your time, your energy, your name, your credit, these are yours. And if anyone tries to use them without your consent, you have the right to say no. You have the right to reclaim what is legally and morally yours. Setting boundaries, protecting yourself, and demanding respect isn't selfish. It's survival, it's courage, and it's the most loving thing you can do for yourself. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where your identity is being used as leverage, where your silence is exploited, or where your family or anyone else treats you like a tool, stop. Read the fine print. Ask questions. Document everything. Seek advice from someone trustworthy. And most importantly, take your name back. Because your life belongs to you. Your choices belong to you. And your voice is finally yours to use.